It's, oh, you haven't had sex. It's like, well, I haven't chosen to do that yet. I'm choosing instead to be an historical figure. I'm choosing instead to lead an historical right-wing movement. So it's a cope. I'm an incel. I am a proud incel. And when I'm good and ready, I'll get married. I'll still be an incel, though.
So how are you telling other people how to behave towards women when you yourself have not had any actual physical, interaction with them in a romantic capacity, or in fact, in any capacity? If you are looking to some other regimes around the world that do think that women are half the value of a man, I have to question what kind of a person who's had no experience with women is in a position to basically promote these ideas.
Well, I'm having an experience with a woman right now, and I've had lots of experiences with women in my life, not romantically per se, but I've talked to enough women. I've been in, I've known enough women to know sort of what's going on.
Hey man, I hope you're doing well. Things are going to be getting a little bit heavy today, but you can handle it. I believe in you. About a week ago, this 26-year-old self-described incel, Nick Fuentes,
apologies, I mispronounced his name throughout the entire video, my bad,
posted a joke to Twitter. You want to laugh at it with me? Your body, my choice forever. Nick is, of course, referring to the recent American election, apparently under the impression that Trump is going to be rolling back rights for women, which, very well could be the case, but our guy's joke is actually a little late, as what he is specifically referring to is the reproductive rights that were rolled back with the overturning of Roe v. Wade under Democrat President Joe Biden. Now, this comment has proved less controversial than one might imagine, maybe because it's on Twitter, but Your Body, My Choice received over 40,000 likes and got some other hilarious joke replies, such as, they'll never be able to make decisions about their own body, and repeal the 19th. Because why not? If we've come this far, we might as well keep going, right? Stay with me now. You might have heard some of these statistics before, but in case you haven't, I think they make sense to start us off. What you may not know is that between 2009 and 2013, Child Protective Services found that around 63,000 children suffered from this specific kind of abuse. Of the victims under the age of 18, more than 30% are under the age of 12. The majority of this kind of violence is perpetrated by someone who is close to the victim, often in the supposed safety of their own homes. Nearly 50% of victims of any age were either sleeping or otherwise incapacitated. Often a person doesn't realize or understand what happened to them until weeks, months, or in extreme cases even years later. And by that point, it could be a little late. Something that I take for granted about living in America is my ability to pursue a life of my own creation. I've been able to sustain myself entirely over the past few years from making YouTube videos, playing live music, and working part-time. You know what would immediately stop my ability to live the way that I do, to work the way that I do, to support myself or my immediate family the way that I do, to make plans for my future the way that I do? Having a kid. I'm going to let you in on a little secret. Despite the way life be fucking me over, I haven't gotten pregnant yet. Crazy, I know. If someone is assaulted and gets pregnant, should they have to give birth? Now, I've talked to a few people about this specific topic, and I've come to realize that there are people who want you to believe that that concern is a fringe concern. Here's what actual statistics, facts and logic have to say. The national rape-related pregnancy rate is 5% per rape among victims of reproductive age, which is 12 to 45. Among adult women, an estimated 32,101 pregnancies result from rape each year. Among 34 cases of rape-related pregnancy, the majority occurred among adolescents and results from assault by a known, often related perpetrator. Only 11.7% of these victims received immediate medical attention after the assault, and 47.1% received no medical attention related to the rape. A total of 32.4% of these victims did not realize they were pregnant until they had already entered the second trimester. 32.2% opted to keep the infant, whereas 50% underwent abortion, and 5.9% placed the infant up for adoption. In addition, 11.8% had what is called a spontaneous abortion. Now, this line of questioning, should a raped person be forced to give birth, is a powerful question that does deserve an answer. But to be honest, it's still rooted in this idea that having a child is, generally speaking, a deserved result of having sex. Do you believe that? Do you think that if someone has sex, that they should be cursed with a child that they didn't intend or are unequipped or unwilling to raise? I don't. I don't think taking 20 years from a teenager counts as a learning experience. I don't think it should matter the circumstances that lead a person to seek out reproductive care. And I think the desire to know those things about other people is a breach of medical privacy and the personal agency of those around you. If I were to become a parent, I'd want my kid to have the best of everything that I could provide. I'd want to be able to raise them. I would want to teach and learn. And above all, I would want to love them, like unconditionally, right? Wanted and desired pregnancies are awesome. Having and raising kids can be extremely rewarding. You would never deny someone that. However, if someone is forced to have a kid, they're far more likely to harbor feelings of resentment towards the child. Contrary to some guys' personal belief, parenting can and will be a full-time job. One whose responsibilities are ever-changing, ever-morphing, constantly demanding. And while many parents will be quick to tell you how rewarding parenting is, I wonder how many of them would be comfortable with their kids, the ones that they have raised, growing up unwanted, unloved, or in a compromising situation by a person who was unable to get an abortion. In the 1960s, the slogan "My Body, My Choice" emerged in feminist movements to show solidarity and support for freedom of choice and bodily autonomy for women. This includes abortion rights, end-of-life care, sexual autonomy even within marriage, and just general reproductive rights. This idea that a third party shouldn't control your future and force you into a dictated role in life has proved quite controversial. As you may have noticed, within the last few years, some of those rights have been revoked in America. And it becomes interesting what constitutes as a right, because ideally a person's right to something wouldn't be infringed, but here we are. In the last few decades, enormous strides have been made towards the liberation of women in countries all over the globe. In fact, the recent regression in the United States is an outlier, a stark contrast to the newfound autonomy that many, many countries now enjoy, which represent hundreds of years of campaigning, activism, and just hard work. When people with unintended pregnancies face barriers to obtaining safe, timely, affordable, geographically reachable, respectful, and non-discriminatory abortion care, they often resort to unsafe abortion. As of May 17th, 2024, around 45% of abortions are performed unsafely. If you're a guy watching this, are you aware of how an unsafe abortion generally goes? I've been told before that I should censor my language for the algorithm's sake, but fuck it. A common side effect is a perforated uterus. I wonder what could have caused that. Imagine if there was something that men went through where they could easily get medical treatment, or they could choose to stab themselves up the dick in desperation to try and hold on to the life that they're currently leading, to avoid losing their freedom. Do you think that treatment would be readily available? Since the overturning of Roe v. Wade, 41 states have some form of abortion ban, with 13 of those being a complete ban across the board, including in cases of rape or significant risk to health, with an additional 4 states having a ban at 6 weeks. Alabama, Arkansas, Idaho, Indiana, Kentucky, Louisiana, Mississippi, Missouri, Oklahoma, South Dakota, Tennessee, Texas, and West Virginia are those pesky states that have banned abortion, and Florida, South Carolina,
Iowa,
and my home state of Georgia have set their limits at 6 weeks. If you're a guy, you might be asking yourself, why 6 weeks is an issue? Surely a month and a half is enough time to make a decision regarding something like this, which could maybe make sense. Except, the most common way to know that you've gotten pregnant is noticing when you miss a period. But this isn't always going to be reliable, as many women experience irregular periods. There are other physical changes which can occur which are normally confusing, and if the pregnancy was unintended, it can be quite a while before you even begin to understand what it is that is happening to you. The beginning of your pregnancy is legally dated from the first day of your last period, even though you likely conceived around 2 weeks after that. That means by the time you actually miss a period, which is the first sign that you might be pregnant and you might start to have warning bells going off in your head. You could technically already be 4 weeks pregnant if you have a 28-day cycle. Now, seeing as up to 25% of women have irregular periods, and knowing that they don't start your countdown from conception, but from the start of your last period, it might seem like 6 weeks isn't enough time to make a decision about this type of thing. It's, for many people, not even enough time to know that you are pregnant in the first place. And if it wasn't something intended, it's one of the most traumatic things that I can imagine happening to somebody. As your entire body changes and morphs to accommodate this thing growing inside of you and nourishing itself off of you. While 6 weeks in many cases is too short, you may be asking yourself, well, what are people supposed to do in those states that have banned abortion entirely? As you may already know, and as you may even be a part of, there is currently a stigma against even the idea of the procedure, generally stemming from either a religious or a secular viewpoint that an unborn fetus counts as a human life and is as important or even more important than the person carrying it. This idea is often rooted in purity culture and, to some extent, rape culture. Stay with me now. While it might be difficult for a well-adjusted person to understand how this idea has any sort of ties to rape culture, just take a look at what's currently being said by the people who are deeply entrenched in the ideologies of people like Andrew Tate. They are telling these people that they lost their rights. They are the ones framing having a child as this life-changing or life-ruining event. They are excited by the idea that the activity that they deemed unclean will hurt the person engaging with it. You'll hear cries of slut and whore and bitch coming from the mouths of these men who try to place themselves on a pedestal as a demagogue, appealing to the teenage porn addicts and the divorced incels shame cycle, and shift the blame for the issues of the entire world onto the mere concept of a woman whose life amounts to more than their ability to be wife and mother. At what point does an ethical question appear for abortion? While I personally take more of an ethical issue with a person being forced to have and raise a kid against their will at any stage of the process, there are a lot of differing opinions to consider. Some people are a little misinformed and seem to believe that every egg and every sperm counts as life, or as a life, which would mean that every period is murder, and every one of those people's jack-off sessions is murder as well. Now, we already know that there's evidence that a growing baby cannot actually feel any sort of pain until the 6th month of gestation, which is a bit longer than 6 weeks. Apparently, who could have imagined? Facts are important, especially when it comes to policies and discussions that impact patients. The science conclusively establishes that a human fetus does not have the capacity to experience pain until after, or at least, 24 to 25 weeks. Sound health policy is best based on scientific fact and evidence-based medicine. Gestational age bands alleging concerns about fetal pain reflect a misunderstanding and misrepresentation of the science of gestational development and viability. The best healthcare is provided free of government interference in the patient-clinician relationship. Personal decision-making by patients and their healthcare professionals should not be replaced by a political or spiritual ideology. Abortion is an essential part of comprehensive medical care, and a patient's decision to end a pregnancy following appropriate consultation with their trusted medical professional should be treated with respect. Okay, but what about more spiritual concerns? Estimates as of 2021 show that somewhere around 63% of the American population identifies as Christian, which is honestly insane to me. I mean, good for them in their majority opinion, but as someone who was raised Christian, I was taught that we were currently being persecuted and our beliefs were in the vast minority. So I'm relieved to discover that that's not the case and hasn't ever been the case in the entire history of America as a nation. While you can find many verses in the Bible discussing the value of human life, it is kind of difficult to find any that specifically reference abortion. However, I found a verse in one of the books of the Apocrypha which is extremely clear. Thou shalt do no murder, thou shalt not commit adultery, thou shalt not commit sodomy, thou shalt not commit fornication, thou shalt not procure abortion nor commit infanticide. I know many people, including Christians, are unaware of the significance of the many books and ancient texts that were kept out of the Bible as we currently know it today in the iteration that it is now. But these books are very important in many denominations' decisions about their internal rules and politics, especially Catholics, which is interesting because this particular text is generally agreed by most biblical scholars to be a uniquely Jewish text, which was trying to help Gentiles understand the religion better. But yeah, I'm not going to bore you with all the details. Aside from that one verse, which clearly refers to abortion as murder, as infanticide. So what are we going to do now? Wait, I think I'm forgetting something about America. Hold on. So I hadn't heard about this before. Maybe you guys can fill me in. But there's this tiny little, nearly inconsequential thing in our Constitution called the First Amendment, which actually prevents the government from making laws respecting an establishment of religion, prohibiting the free exercise of religion, or abridging the freedom of speech. That's so cool. It's almost like our entire government was originally established on the defining trait that people's religion would not affect the government and the government would not affect people's religious beliefs. While our country has had some less than shining moments, freedom is generally the excuse to make up for our arguably very, very young country's mistakes in their past. No law should be made which favors any particular religion. Instead, we have to look to reason and logic to inform the decisions, keeping the best interests of the governed populace in mind. The religious, even if that includes me, have no right to force doctors not to give people the care that they need. And as we already said, people have been finding ways to have abortions for forever that are actively violent and cause a lot of harm to the uterus. I think that maybe instead of putting up red tape, we should try to ease that suffering as much as we possibly can. There is another angle to consider. Multiple girls that I know personally have had to get abortions within the last few years. And according to more than one of them, there was a psychological evaluation to make sure that they were of sound mind before getting medical help. There were wait times to schedule those appointments, which is convenient for people who want to limit the amount of time you have to get an abortion. There was judgment from family and extended family, including many people who really shouldn't have known. It wasn't their business, the personal medical information of this teenager or young adult, which would mean that their privacy and decency had been breached in the name of gossip and hatred from the supposedly very family-oriented. They were shown slideshows, which I was told caused emotional distress and were designed to make them doubtful or question their decision. Why any of that is considered standard procedure is beyond me. You should look up some of the other, frankly, insane and barbaric medical practices that we still subject women to, with devices that look like something out of a Saw movie. Now, the opinion of the ever-concerned is that lives are at risk. The lives of children. Think of the children, please. Every year, around 100,000 people are shot, with 40% of those people getting killed. I personally have family who have been affected by gun violence, and I'm not trying to say that people should have their right to bear arms infringed, but I have noticed that some of the most concerned over loss of life don't seem to have any issue at all with weapons of mass destruction. They often seem more focused on saying things like Sandy Hook were fake news. It's kind of funny how Sandy Hook was fake news and a huge controversial event for so long, and now school shootings happen once a week. It's ironic that when fighting for the safety of the unborn over the safety of the women who live among us, we then turn a complete blind eye to the safety of our own children and the American youth. And something that you'll often hear gun activists say is that guns are going to be had whether they are controlled or not. Pandora's box has been opened. There is nowhere else for us to go but into a future which includes these weapons. And therefore, it's better for those weapons to be legal and for information regarding them to be widely understood, which is fine. And history has shown us that people use hangers to perform abortions on themselves. Maybe since we have the capability to perform them painlessly, it would be better for them to be legal and information regarding them to be widely understood. Look around you. It shouldn't be that you only discover empathy if it directly relates to a self-centered understanding that the world revolves around you. But that's what it takes to get through sometimes. If you have daughters, wives, mothers, friends, people who are being affected by this, you need to care. You might think it doesn't apply to you, that it's only banned in some states, that if something were to happen, you could just travel to another state and get an abortion there. But aside from the fact that many simply cannot afford to travel out of state and pay out of pocket for reproductive care, in April 2023, Idaho became the first state to impose travel restrictions with what it calls an abortion trafficking law. This law prevents people from helping minors who are not their children get abortions, including in another state. It always starts as concerns for the children, but the precedent this sets can and will take hold and morph into something else. You should not be able to ban the American people's ability to travel on American soil for any reason. Now, back to our friend Nick. You might not remember, but I called his comments jokes multiple times. That might have offended you a little bit. Honestly, it probably should. There's this great article from NPR on this guy, and I'm going to read a little bit of it to you now. On a recent episode of his live stream show, the 22-year-old extremist Nick repeated a formula that has won him a following with some of the youngest members of the far right. He went on an extended, violent, and misogynistic rant, only to turn to the camera and add with a smirk, "Just joking." A viewer wrote in to ask him for advice on how to, quote-unquote, punish his wife for getting out of line. Fuentes responded, "Why don't you smack her across the face? Why don't you give her a vicious and forceful backhanded slap with your knuckles right across her face, disrespectfully, and make it hurt?" He went on. At one point, he pantomimed punching a woman in the face. He then added, "I'm kidding, of course. Just kidding, it's just a joke." Fuentes is following a playbook popular among domestic extremists, using irony and claims of just joking to spread their message while deflecting criticism. Researchers who track domestic extremism say the tactic, while not new, has helped several groups mask their danger, avoid consequences, and draw younger people into their movements. Fuentes said in a 2020 video that irony is so important for giving a lot of cover and plausible deniability for our views. He specifically cited Holocaust denial, or what he terms Holocaust revision, as a topic that is too fraught to discuss earnestly, even within the far right. When it comes to a lot of these issues, you need a little bit of maneuverability that irony gives you. A lot of these content creators will tell the audience explicitly, when people say you're racist for liking this or thinking this, just laugh at them. They can't handle it. They're sensitive babies. And now for the reason that I wanted to make this video. Recently, there's been a frankly alarming increase in young men and boys at school saying, "Your body, my choice," at women, girls, and teachers, getting rowdy or even violent, apparently all across the country. To the young men in schools shouting, "Your body, my choice, keep doing it. Baby murder will never be okay. The boys are just trolling. They're tired of adults policing their thoughts. They have freedom of speech and they are exercising it." The interesting misconception about freedom of speech is if I went on social media and said, "I'm going to shoot up a school," I wouldn't be surprised if the next day teachers were waiting for someone of my description to try and hurt the school children. There is no one policing my thoughts or words, but in the same regard, I can't police the thoughts and words of those who hear what I have to say and take it seriously. It's almost like when these people complain about thought policing, what they're actually complaining about is other people exercising their freedom of speech. What they want is freedom from any sort of negative reaction or consequences as a result of the things that they say and do. Unfortunately, jokes don't work like that. And "your body, my choice" is absolutely a call to disregard another human's agency and self-governance. The entire movement here is unethical, and it's disguising itself as being about concern for the health of children when it's truly about controlling and subjugating women. It's incredibly interesting to me how many of these con men and demagogues co-opt the Christian label, "Christ is king." Yeah, right. Turns out my IUD was a good choice. Oh my god, these jokes are so funny. "I saw a woman crossing the road today, but I just kept my foot down. Right of way. You no longer have rights." I'll give you 3 seconds to guess who said, "Oh, right, it's Andrew Tate." In response to all this, some people have been saying that the only reasonable form of protest would be to stop having sex altogether, and this person says she wants a president who isn't a rapist. And to be clear, Trump's team have vehemently denied that he is a sex offender and sues anyone who claims that he did anything like that to them. And this person responded, "Request denied. What is this even supposed to mean? That you believe the president is a rapist? And you admire him for that? What? Who would be so stupid as to publicly post that on social media? A big part of the reason why I wanted to make this video was a recent conversation I witnessed my younger sister have with a fairly conservative dude, and they both kind of seemed misinformed to some degree. I think it's perfectly reasonable to be angry. In fact, if I can be so bold, I think you should be a little bit more angry. I know I'm just some fucking guy, but I wanted to try and educate and learn. If I can help any teenager or young adult articulate their concerns better, then so help me God, I'm going to. People deserve healthcare. Even if you personally don't agree with their healthcare decisions, you cannot, for your own sake, open the floodgates of allowing laws to be passed based on your personal subjective sense of morality that will arbitrarily discriminate against certain healthcare. It shouldn't be a state's right to decide whether you can or cannot access a doctor. And one day this type of stuff is going to come back to bite us all in the ass, as anything could be banned along the way. To get real, as if this was not real, I know for a fact that certain of my family, friends, and others will likely be frustrated or angry with me for making a video like this. Like I said, I live in a rural part of Georgia. I've been raised a certain way, and I disagree with a lot of the people around me on a lot of things. But this is a topic I've been passionate about for a while because, frankly, it's disgusting that women are treated as second-class citizens regarding their health. Like, apparently, if you go to get like your tubes tied, you are discouraged from it by doctors who will ask you if your husband has signed off on it, even if you don't have a husband. But thanks to the recent "your body, my choice" remarks, I just kind of felt like, for me personally, it was like an enough is enough, and I want to, I don't know, I want to be mean about it a little bit. Like, I want to feel proud of my fellow men, you know? And instead I'm just, perpetually disappointed. And I care about the opinions of my sisters and my mother and my partner and my friends who are and will continue to be affected by this type of thing. And I want you to know that you are appreciated and you are not alone. And if you can withstand this attack on your characters, souls, and freedoms, then I guess I can hang in there through arguments and long nights or whatever worse, I want to leave this on some sort of good note. Right now, more than ever, we need to embrace those who are victims of circumstances outside of their control. A while back, we did a fundraiser for the Joyful Heart Foundation, whose mission is to transform society's response to domestic violence, sexual abuse, and child abuse. They were one of the few charities that I found that had an actual step-by-step game plan, and they showed you exactly where your money was going, and they had a full, fleshed out, comprehensive mission statement. And last time we raised over $2,000, so it's time for round 2, baby! There will be a link below to go check them out, and thanks for watching. Hang in there.